You got your first shakuhachi, you finally managed to get a tone, and then you realize the pitch is low. Of course, the first question that comes to mind, have I been scammed? In this video, I will give you the answer. Hi, I am Marcus and I play the shakuhachi. I often get questions like this one. My shakuhachi is tuned to C. Am I playing in wrong position? I play traditional Western flute, so I get clear sound but wrong key. Or simply this version, have I been scammed? My flute is too low. So let's explore the different possibilities here, but there actually is a very, very, very short answer. No, you were not scammed. So this question, of course, is about the pitch of the instrument, but before we get to that, let's get something else out of the way, because there is actually another much bigger chance that you did get scammed in another way, which is that you were sold a xiao rather than a shakuhachi.
Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao.
A shakuhachi is a Japanese flute. It has thick walls, 5 holes, and the standard length is 1 shaku, 8 sun. So this is a shakuhachi. 4 holes in the front, 1 hole in the back. And look at the blowing edge here. A xiao is a Chinese flute. It is usually thinner, longer, and it has more than 5 holes. Also, the mouthpiece is different on a xiao than on a shakuhachi. So again, look at the shakuhachi's mouthpiece. But let's get to the heart of the matter. The first response, of course, always has to be, it's not the flute mate, it's you. I mean, just consider the likelihood that a flute maker advertises a flute with a different pitch than what the instrument actually produces. I mean, what's the incentive for that? Even if we were cynical about the morals of the makers trying to make a quick buck or whatever, you probably agree that this is not a suitable, sustainable sales strategy. Yeah, you would get bad reviews and then very soon you would not be able to sell anything anyway. But even so, of course, it is possible that instead of a standard length shakuhachi, your flute is longer. So a standard length shakuhachi is 1 shaku, 8 sun. This is where the instrument gets its name. Yeah, ichi shakuhachi sun. But this is shortened to shakuhachi, or translated shaku 8. In Western measurements, this is 54.5 centimeters. So if you want to know if your shakuhachi is longer than a standard length, just measure it and then you know. Small deviations, I should mention at this point, are possible. So you might get a slightly different pitch or you might get a slightly different length, but not by as much as a whole step like the one person asked in the first question I quoted. So a C instead of a D, and this is a whole step. A shakuhachi in C is a 2.0, not a 1.8. So a 2.0 shakuhachi would be 60 centimeters. So that's quite a noticeable difference in length. So you should assume that even cheap flutes, which means flutes that cost a few €100, dollars, pounds, will be tuned in such a way that the bass note, so the lowest note on the instrument, meaning otsuro in shakuhachi terms, actually corresponds to what you would expect. You may have seen that a while back I made some videos on how to choose and get the beginner's flute. I looked at some non-bamboo options and I also made an extensive analysis of a cheap bamboo flute from an online retailer. The upshot of all this investigation and my experience is that a usable bamboo flute is not cheap. Yeah, you're looking at several €100, pounds, dollars, but realistically, you're looking at $1,000, euros, pounds. Why is nobody saying 1,000? You say 900, 1,100, 1,200, 1,000? Nobody says. Anyway, leave me a comment. I don't know. It's a bit silly, of course, this question, but I don't know. Does anybody have an idea about this? So, you're looking at around €1,000, dollars, pounds for a usable student instrument. However, I should also say at the moment the yen is very cheap, so prices will be lower at the moment. Of course, many or even most of the shakuhachi still come from Japan, so it's a good opportunity to get an instrument now. And adding to this is that at the moment at least, this is a buyer's market. So you have many used shakuhachi on offer, and this also, of course, is reflected in the prices that you pay for an instrument like that. Also, just to say this as well, just by a used shakuhachi, there basically is no difference between a used instrument and a new instrument if the used instrument, of course, is in good order. It's not like you have any deteriorating elements in the shakuhachi. Okay, so in the recorder, for example, and the headpiece, you have this block that over time just degrades. Yeah, but in the shakuhachi, you don't have any elements like this. So just by a used instrument, it's always a great way to start. So now let's turn to the issue of why the pitch is so low. You will notice, or you already will have noticed, that making a sound on the shakuhachi is difficult at first because you have to form and direct the airstream yourself. Again, if I take the comparison to the recorder, where the sound is produced, this is identical in the recorder. Okay, you have this labium here, we call this blowing edge, or utaguchi on the shakuhachi. Okay, but this is the same in both instruments. But in the recorder, on top of this, you have this headpiece. Yeah, so you close your lips around this headpiece and you just blow into it, and the airstream is directed automatically to the blowing edge. You don't have this in the shakuhachi, which makes it difficult to aim and form the airstream so that it hits the blowing edge. And if you bring your lips closer, like this is initially easier to produce a sound. So this position, rather, but this creates a low pitch. You are playing in what is called a mari position in shakuhachi terms. If you play another type of flute, you will not be used to having the blowing edge so far away as you have in the normal playing position for the shakuhachi. So the solution to getting the right pitch on your instrument, which was not a scam probably when you bought it, is that you need to move your lips away further from the blowing edge. And this is difficult. It takes practice. And because the first sound on the shakuhachi is often difficult, at least for many people, it's very difficult to get the first sound. Once you get the sound, there is a great fear of losing it again. So this tendency is to stay in this position. But again, the solution is move up. Okay, so how do you do it? How do you raise the pitch? In the end, it's just practicing, bringing your flute into the right playing position. Yeah, I always like to say that learning to play the shakuhachi is a bit like a game of expanding ranges. Okay, we live in a time of gamification, so you can turn learning to play shakuhachi into a game. So what I mean by that, for playing shakuhachi, you need to learn to play the high notes. In kan, you need to learn to play the low notes. Initially, it's easy to play the notes in the middle. These kinds of notes, yeah, re, chi, ri. Playing otsuro, playing high notes in kan. This is much more difficult initially. Yeah? So expand your ranges, lower notes, higher notes. Next range, sound color, yeah, making a clean tone, making a rough tone. You want this range, but initially you probably will only be able to produce one particular sound color. Also, volume. Initially, it's easy to play middle volume. It's more difficult playing loudly and keeping the tone stable. Also, playing quietly is difficult. So, here as well. Expanding ranges. So, for the playing position, it's the same game. Yeah, you practice playing in different playing positions, deep mari positions, high kari positions. The main difficulty for learning to play in a higher playing position is that you need to learn to relax the lips or the embouchure. Otherwise, it's more or less impossible to direct the airstream to the utaguchi. If I have stiff lips, stiff embouchure, okay, here I'm just blowing over the instrument because this is not adjusting. The airstream just goes this way. Okay, here I make a sound, then the airstream goes still here, but it does not hit the flute anymore. So the direction of the airstream needs to change, and for that, the lips need to be loose. They need to be relaxed. Okay, learning this takes time. Some people need just an hour, maybe some people need a day, others need months or maybe years, okay? And just to make this very clear, at least for me personally, this does not reflect badly on you at all, okay? Sometimes it takes a long time. For some people, it's instantaneous. Actually, there is a group of experienced musicians who often struggle when playing shakuhachi or when they want to start playing shakuhachi. And this is brass wind instrument players. They are used to a tight embouchure that needs a lot of muscle tension. And this is the polar opposite of what you need for the shakuhachi. So, have you been scammed? No. I think it's very, very unlikely that you've been scammed. If your pitch is low, learn to raise the pitch. Play more in a cuddy position. For that, of course, I say this on this channel many times, find an experienced player. Of course, I have a vested interest. I'm a shakuhachi teacher, so it doesn't have to be a shakuhachi teacher, not licensed and all that kind of stuff, but just find an experienced players, okay? Just find somebody who solved the problem and who can give you some tips about how to do it, okay? Ideally, of course, if you're serious about the instrument, get a teacher. It's just the best way to learn. Despite my vested interest, I still think it's the best way to learn the instrument. I hope this answers the question. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.